Remember when American cars were global giants? Remember when the Ford Mustang ruled international roads? When American SUVs were status symbols in Beijing? And when Buick became the unlikely hero in the Chinese market? For years, Detroit's finest rolled across the globe as ambassadors of horsepower and heritage. But in 2025, those glory days just hit a wall, a tariff wall. Ford's latest move to halt exports of finished vehicles to China marks not just a business decision, it's a seismic shock to the global auto industry. It's not just about tariffs, it's about a total realignment of how, where, and for whom cars are made. And in this unfolding drama, Buick, riding high on a comeback, is now staring down disaster. It's not just Ford that's affected. This decision tugs at the heart of America's industrial identity. Ford's Mustang, Raptor, Explorer, and the luxury Lincoln SUVs were once symbols of aspirational ownership across Asia, particularly in China. But with Beijing's 150% retaliatory tariffs now in force, that dream is dead. Ford isn't exporting those models anymore, not because it doesn't want to, but because no one in China can afford them now. Imagine waking up one morning to learn that your best-selling products have become unsellable. And Buick, the brand that quietly found new life by selling small SUVs in China and the US, is being shattered by friendly fire as Ford's trade battle triggers waves that Buick's global supply chain can't withstand. Struggling to understand why Ford would abandon such a massive market, China slapped a crippling 150% tariff on American vehicle imports. That turns a $50,000 SUV into a $125,000 SUV overnight. Ford had two options: absorb the cost and lose money, or pass it to the customer and lose sales. They chose a third path: shut it down. Ford's exit from Chinese exports is part of a broader realignment strategy. Manufacture in Mexico, where costs are lower and access to US and Latin markets is smoother. Invest heavily in US-based EV production, where domestic subsidies and Biden-era incentives sweeten the deal and reduce exposure to politically volatile trade routes like US-China. It's not defeat, it's retreat and restructure.
Before we get to that, I need your help. I'm trying to hit 50,000 subscribers by the end of the year, and I need your help. So I would really appreciate it if you could subscribe and help me out.
If Ford's move is disruptive, Buick's situation is catastrophic. Buick's recent revival depended on the Encore GX, a crossover SUV built in South Korea, the Envista, a stylish budget crossover built in China, and the Envision, another Chinese-built compact SUV making waves in American suburbs. But now, all three are subject to 27 to 50% tariffs just for existing outside US borders. That turns a $28,000 Encore GX into a $35,000 one. And for middle-class buyers already stretched by inflation, that's a deal-breaker. Buick's comeback wasn't just good, it was strategic. And now, it's being dismantled by trade politics beyond its control. Analysts from Just Auto and Auto News are calling this moment a forced reset for American automakers. The entire North American trade playbook is being rewritten, one veteran auto strategist told CNBC. A Ford executive on Background said, "We can't build cars globally if the world doesn't want to buy them globally anymore." Even YouTube auto analysts, once obsessed with comparing Ford versus Buick SUV specs, are now releasing videos titled, "Tariffs just killed these cars. Here's what that means for you." The message is clear. This isn't business as usual. It's business as battleground. This moment isn't just dramatic. It's dangerous for automakers who don't adapt. inventory slowdowns are already hitting Buick dealerships. Sticker shock is creeping in as 2025 models built abroad arrive with post-tariff price tags. Customer confidence is eroding, especially in markets like Texas, Florida, and California, where SUVs dominate. For Ford, the export halt is a short-term loss, but a long-term pivot. For Buick, it's a now or never moment. Without immediate localization, their entire sales strategy may crumble. If you see yourself as a smart buyer, a working professional, or someone who just wants a reliable SUV without going broke, this hits home. That affordable Encore GX you were eyeing, that stylish Invista that finally made Buick cool again, that rugged Explorer that was made for road trips and real life, they're all caught in the crossfire. This trade war isn't just Washington versus Beijing, it's you versus the price tag. And suddenly, that comfortable middle ground, global design with local affordability, is disappearing. Ford's decision to abandon exports to China isn't just a reaction, it's a paradigm shift. Localized production will now dominate global strategy. Tariff-immune supply chains will become the gold standard, and EVs built on American soil will be the battleground of the future. By pulling out of China, Ford is pushing toward a model that minimizes risk and maximizes flexibility. Instead of one-size-fits-all cars shipped worldwide, we're moving toward regional specialization, where cars are made for and in specific markets. And that means global automakers will have to think locally or get left behind. Ford's bold shutdown of Chinese exports isn't just about tariffs, it's about survival and strategy. Buick's overseas-built lineup is suddenly fragile, exposed to forces it can't control. The US-China trade war isn't just political, it's personal for every buyer, dealer, and worker in the auto industry. And most of all, this is a wake-up call. The rules of the road have changed. The future will belong to automakers who are agile, adaptive, and able to play chess in a world that no longer plays checkers. You've seen the pivot. Now ask yourself, are you still driving the car built for yesterday, or are you ready for the road ahead? Because in the new age of global trade wars, every decision under the hood is a political one.
Before we get to that, I need your help. I'm trying to hit 50,000 subscribers by the end of the year, and I need your help. So I would really appreciate it if you could subscribe and help me out.
There's a particular heartbreak in watching something rise, only to collapse. Buick's resurgence wasn't just a fluke, it was hard-fought. Years of redesigns, strategic pricing, and bold marketing had finally started to pay off. Dealerships saw foot traffic rise. Critics actually praised the brand's new direction. Then came the tariffs, and suddenly, everything that made Buick's success possible – cross-border manufacturing, affordable pricing, streamlined exports – was shattered. Now, consumers are balking at prices. Inventory is stagnating. The brand is gasping for air, and it happened in the blink of an eye. Let's get into the hard reality. Buick's core models rely on international production and global trade. Encore GX and Invista, made in South Korea. Envision, made in China. Additional models like the Regal and LaCrosse had Chinese production lines. These cars were affordable and well-positioned in the compact SUV market. But now, those same vehicles are strangled by tariffs, ranging from 27% to 50%, depending on where they're built. And some, due to the latest 150% duties, may not even be viable in the market anymore. Add to that Ford's decision to halt all vehicle exports to China, and Buick's infrastructure begins to crumble. The logistics chain, once seamless, is now a financial minefield. There is no clean solution in sight. Buick's pricing strategy is ruined. Its supply chain is compromised, and its carefully built momentum is slipping away. You might ask, why is Ford's decision hurting Buick? Because it's not about one company. It's about a systemic breakdown in how automakers do business globally. China responded to new US tariffs by jacking up duties on US-made vehicles. That led Ford to pause all shipments to China, including key SUVs and sports cars. Now Buick, owned by GM but heavily dependent on China for production and sales, is collateral damage. In short, Ford started the retreat, but Buick may be the one who gets left behind. Industry analysts aren't sugarcoating it. In fact, they're sounding dire warnings. This could destroy Buick's momentum completely, said one auto market analyst. A 40% surge can't survive 50% price hikes. It's simple math. Experts agree. Buick is stuck in the worst possible position. Too invested in foreign production to pivot quickly. Too reliant on exports to survive these tariffs, and not profitable enough to absorb the costs without passing them on to consumers. This isn't a small bump in the road. This is a multi-car pileup. Other brands like Chevrolet, Ford, and Lincoln also face global turbulence from these tariffs, but they have larger sales volumes, wider profit margins, and more diversified production lines. Buick does not. Its sales comeback was fragile to begin with. Most of its cars are small, affordable crossovers, the kind of vehicles where a $3,000 tariff could price them out of their segment. Unlike Tesla or Mercedes, Buick can't simply switch to luxury pricing. And unlike Toyota, it doesn't have massive domestic production in North America. It's trapped. Too global to be local, too small to fight back. Let's not dance around it. Buick has no room left for error. Unless GM and Ford dramatically rethink their manufacturing and supply strategies, Buick may go from comeback kid to cautionary tale. This isn't just about one bad quarter. This is about survival. Consumers who want a Buick may soon find none available at the price they expect. Dealerships could face empty showrooms or unsellable inventory, and GM executives will have to make a brutal decision: double down or cut losses. If you believe in comebacks, if you've ever fought your way back from failure, if you've ever tried to rebuild something only to be hit by something you didn't see coming, then you understand exactly what Buick is facing. This isn't just a car brand. It's a symbol of resilience, of rebuilding when everyone counted you out. And now it needs that same energy again. Buick came back from the brink once. It reinvented itself with smart designs, smart pricing, and smart global strategies. But today, that strategy is under siege. Trade wars, tariffs, and export freezes are burning the blueprint, and nobody knows what comes next. So what does Buick do? Adapt, innovate, fight. And if it doesn't, well, this comeback story might just become a eulogy. Remember when the F-150, the Mustang, and the Bronco weren't just trucks and cars. They were symbols: American power, freedom, innovation. From the highways of Texas to the skyscrapers of Shanghai, these vehicles weren't just sold, they were celebrated. Well, that era just came to a grinding halt. In a move that rattled boardrooms and stunned the global automotive sector, Ford has suspended exports of its flagship US-built vehicles to China, responding to skyrocketing retaliatory tariffs that reached as high as 150%. What looked like a business decision is now being viewed as a geopolitical earthquake, and it may be the start of something much bigger. Ford has halted shipments to China of some of its most iconic vehicles, including the F-150 Raptor pickup, the Mustang sports car, the Bronco SUV, assembled in Michigan, and the Lincoln Navigator, produced in Kentucky. These models weren't just products, they were statements of brand identity. But as Chinese tariffs surged, making American cars nearly unaffordable, Ford was left with a choice: bleed losses or pull the plug. They chose the latter. In 2024, Ford exported over 5,500 units of these vehicles to China, a sharp decline from the 20,000-plus units annually they once moved. That cliff drop in sales made one thing clear: the numbers no longer added up. Let's rewind. The US-China trade war isn't new, but it's escalating fast. In response to US tariffs on Chinese EVs and tech goods, China hit back, slapping massive tariffs on imported American vehicles. These tariffs ballooned to an astounding 150%, making a US-built Ford F-150 Raptor nearly twice as expensive in China. It's not just Ford feeling the sting. Industry analysts at the Center for Automotive Research estimate that ongoing trade tensions could add $108 billion in global auto costs by 2025. And those costs are already reshaping the landscape, struggling with inflated costs, uncertain markets, and crumbling margins. So was Ford. For years, they tried to ride out the trade storm. They leaned on brand loyalty, American prestige, and global scale. But eventually, even Ford couldn't outmuscle math. The tariff burden became unsustainable. The demand in China dried up. The China strategy lost direction. So Ford did what others wouldn't. They stopped. It's bold, it's risky, and it might be the first domino in a chain reaction that reshapes international auto trade. Here's what's interesting. Not all exports stopped. Ford is still sending engines and transmissions to China. And guess what? The Lincoln Nautilus, built in China, is still being imported into the US. Why? Because local production is cheaper, tariff-free, politically safer. That dual movement, parts out, cars in, reveals a brutal truth. The future of auto manufacturing isn't global. It's localization under pressure. Ford wasn't alone for long. Within weeks, General Motors announced its own export pause of US-built vehicles to China. It's a domino effect. And the message is clear. If Ford can't survive the tariffs, who can? Major publications from Reuters to India Today and Yahoo Finance are calling this a turning point. Auto World Journal labeled it a strategic retreat in the face of economic warfare. Even investors, usually cautious on geopolitical narratives, are now rebalancing portfolios in anticipation of long-term supply chain reconfigurations, from 20,000-plus vehicle exports annually to just 5,500 in 2024. Trade war projected to cost automakers $108 billion by 2025. Chinese tariffs now 150% on US-made cars. Zero-sum impact. What Ford loses in China, it must rebuild elsewhere. That's not a dip. That's a free fall, and Ford just grabbed the parachute. Ford's bold move is about more than one market. It exposes the fragility of global trade in a volatile world. Cross-border manufacturing once promised scale, savings, and synergy. Now, it delivers cost spikes, regulatory nightmares, and strategic risk. The new mantra: produce where you sell. China for China. US for the US, and everyone else. Choose your partners carefully. If you're a competitor in the auto space, Ford just sounded the alarm. Stop assuming global access is guaranteed. Start planning for fractured markets. Rethink your China strategy. Yesterday. The days of a single global blueprint are over. We've entered the era of parallel supply chains and regional walls. If you're a decision maker, investor, or analyst, ask yourself, Would you keep selling into a market where every sale loses money? Would you sacrifice prestige for profit stability? Would you lead even if it means leaving? If your answers match Ford's, then you're aligned with the future. A future where strategy wins over sentiment. Rivals who don't follow Ford's lead may find themselves hemorrhaging cash in hostile markets, caught in tariff crossfire with no exit plan, lagging in domestic resilience strategies. And for consumers, this could mean higher prices, fewer choices, and a slower recovery in product variety and innovation. Ford's suspension of China exports isn't a retreat, it's a reset. You've seen the F-150s roll off the line. You've admired the Mustang's growl. You've watched Ford become a global icon. Now, you're watching that icon reconfigure. Not because it failed, but because it's choosing to adapt faster than anyone else. This isn't just trade policy. This is the future of mobility under pressure. And Ford? They're not just responding. They're leading the charge. Remember when the Mustang roared into every car lover's dream garage? Or when the F-150 Raptor symbolized American strength on four wheels? Now picture this. Those very symbols of US automotive excellence will no longer reach Chinese roads. That's not just news. It's an earthquake. Ford's shocking decision to halt exports of the Mustang, Bronco, Lincoln Navigator, and F-150 Raptor to China is more than a company decision. It's a cry from the heart of a bruised industry. Faced with tariffs soaring as high as 150%, this bold move has left a global market gasping for air. And what's more alarming? This is just the beginning. It's not just politics, it's survival. As US-China tensions escalate, so do the economic aftershocks. Beijing's retaliatory tariffs have slammed American automakers right where it hurts: exports. Ford is now shouldering an estimated $2.5 billion in tariff-related losses for 2025. That's not just a dent, it's a crater. It forced the automaker to suspend financial guidance, prompting waves of anxiety through Wall Street and Detroit alike. Imagine spending years perfecting high-performance machines for a booming overseas market, only to be priced out overnight. That's the cold reality Ford and other American giants now face. If you're someone who grew up admiring American cars as global ambassadors of innovation and pride, this news hits hard. Because this isn't just about money, it's about relevance. The Mustang was never meant to stay on US roads. It was built to roar around the world. Now, it's caged. Executives, engineers, and auto enthusiasts alike feel a collective grief. The dream of building something in Detroit and seeing it loved in Shanghai is now, at least temporarily, dead. And no one knows how long that coffin will stay shut. Ford's decision didn't just spook its shareholders, it sent a warning flare across the entire automotive landscape. Here's why this is bigger than one company: supply chain chaos. Ford's halt triggers a domino effect, shaking suppliers, dealers, and logistics partners. Everyone who depended on those China-bound vehicles is now scrambling to repurpose, reroute, or shut down operations. Market realignment. China is the largest auto market in the world. Losing access or being priced out means automakers must rethink everything: where they produce, where they sell, and how they compete. Financial tremors. Ford's $2.5 billion projected hit is already making rivals nervous. GM is revising its forecasts downward, bracing for its own impact. If one domino falls, more will follow. And just when you thought it couldn't get worse, enter the rare earth crisis. Ford is raising red flags about China's export restrictions on rare earth minerals, which are essential for electric vehicle (EV) batteries. No rare earths, no EVs. No EVs, no future. It's like building rockets and realizing someone else owns the launch pad. This isn't just about Ford. It's a geopolitical chokehold on the future of transportation. Let's talk solutions. Because Ford isn't folding, it's pivoting. If exports to China are out, localize production. This could mean opening factories in friendly trade zones, Europe, Latin America, Southeast Asia. It's not ideal, but it's a lifeline. With Chinese sales flatlining, Ford may double down on markets with favorable trade terms: Australia, Canada, parts of Africa, and the Middle East. Even amid rare earth risks, Ford is betting on domestic EV expansion, relying on North American supply chains and partnerships. The message: we'll build our future, even if we build it alone. Ford's not crying wolf. This isn't corporate drama, it's industry-wide panic. GM is slashing expectations. Tesla is reportedly reassessing global logistics. Volkswagen and BMW are watching nervously, knowing their US operations may face retaliatory backlash too. Even analysts who once scoffed at trade war warnings are now calling it the most disruptive moment in auto industry globalization since WTO. If Ford's move seemed extreme, it's because the danger is real. If you're a car enthusiast, investor, or someone who dreams of owning a Bronco or Mustang in a globalized world, this moment matters, because what's unraveling here is the fantasy of a seamless global auto market. Cars you love may no longer be available in the countries that crave them. Prices may skyrocket as tariffs and production costs rise. Innovation could slow as companies hoard resources and cut spending. And worst of all, consumers will pay the price. This is not just an economic shift, it's an identity crisis for an industry that was built on global dreams and Detroit steel. This isn't a wait-and-see situation. Ford's suspension is already live. Shipments have stopped, factories are pivoting, consumers in China are turning to domestic brands like BYD and NIO, not by choice, but necessity. And while Ford and others figure out new strategies, the longer they wait, the more market share they lose, perhaps forever. Ford's story has always been about resilience. From the Model T to the Mustang, the company has stood tall through wars, recessions, oil crises, and technological revolutions. But this is a new battlefield, one with no clear roadmap. Yet maybe that's the point. Because if you believe in the power of American ingenuity, if you still feel a chill when a Bronco roars or a Mustang tears through a corner, then you know this fight isn't over. It's just moved into a new gear. Ford isn't backing down. Neither should we. You've followed the headlines. You've seen the numbers. But now it's time to think bigger. What kind of automotive world do you want? One where vehicles move freely, dreams are exported, and roads connect continents? Or one where borders, tariffs, and politics put walls between you and the car you love? Ford has made its move. Now the question is, how will the world respond? Because you're not just watching history, you're riding in it.